Oh, my vent. Why is my vent in the... Like, every time I set up my camera, it's different. I sink down a little more, and then point this down. There we go, that's better, right? What's up, my fellow drunken philosophers? Stu for Stulosophy, the drunken philosopher here. I'm on Jack Hare. I took a couple of half hits, and so I'm not very high at all right now. Which is fine, but I'll take a third toke, and we'll get there. Yeah, a normal size toke. That ought to do it for us. Well guys, I'm excited for this video because I've tried many times to do a video about one of my favorite philosophers, a philosopher that's had a really big influence and impact on my life and my viewpoint and my own personal philosophy. And I know you're like, hardly anything survives from Heraclitus. Like, we know almost nothing about him. I can just imagine Heraclitus camping out and sitting by the fire and taking a toke or a swig, being like, wow, look at that fire. It's always changing. You know what else is always changing? Everything else. What if, now just listen to me here, guys, for a minute. What if everything's made out of fire? Yeah, that's not why I love him. The thing from his writings that changed my viewpoint pretty drastically is his river analogy, right? And people will quote him in different ways, but the way that I learned it and is kind of set in my head, and so when somebody says Heraclitus, I say, no man steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river and he's not the same man. And it's become kind of ingrained in my mind. Because I read that, and to me, it spoke to the fact that we are influenced by our environment, that we are who we are because of our environment, because of the things that happen to us, because of the things that we are exposed to. And we do not choose these things. I did not choose what part of the world I was going to be born in. I did not choose the circumstances I was born into. I did not choose the time. I did not choose my family, my race, my culture, the government to which I was automatically subjected to upon birth, the ideology that I was taught growing up. And these were thoughts that I'd been having for a long time, a very long time, a lot of my life since I was very young, just not so elaborately or deeply. But I remember in 1991, I was doing a research project for school. I had to write up a report on, I think it was the Eastern Bloc. So I went to the library to do research, and I stumbled across a Time magazine article on Scientology. Now, I was interested in Scientology because I was an L. Ron Hubbard fan. I had read Mission Earth and really enjoyed it. Well, most of it anyway. And I found out that L. Ron Hubbard created this religion known as Scientology. And I was like, wait, a sci-fi author created a religion that's very sci-fi sounding? But it made me curious. And so when I found this Time article about it, I went through and read it, and I was like, people believe this stuff? And so I sat down and thought to myself, how is it that people out there can believe in things so ridiculously, preposterously, absurdly out there that it is just obvious that it's false? How can people believe it? And then I got to thinking back when I was in grade school and thought the same thing about the ancient Greeks and ancient Greek mythology. More than one god, you know, I'm like 7, 8 years old. More than one god? How can anybody believe that? That's so ridiculous. And then I realized pretty quickly, even at that young age, oh, well, they were taught that there were lots of gods. When they were born, I was taught that there's only one God from the time that I was born. So of course I believe in one God, and of course they believed in lots of gods. It's too bad that their gods are all fake. We can go to the top of Mount Olympus and see that there's no gods there. My God lives on another planet. And so, as we are exposed to things, we become the person that has been exposed to those things. When a man steps in a river, how can he be anything other than a man who had stepped in the river? He can no longer be the man who didn't step in the river because he did step in the river, and so now he's the man who stepped in the river, not the man who didn't step in the river. And stepping in that river had its influence. It had its influence on the river. It caused the water to flow around him. Just like when I step in front of the ant, it has to take time to avoid me and walk around me. And now, its influence on its environment from that point forward is going to be different than the influence it has on its environment that it would have had I not put my foot in front of it and caused it to delay. It is now the ant that was detoured around my foot instead of the ant that was not. And he cannot help but be that ant from that point forward. Because you watched this video, you are a different person than you would have been had you not watched this video. No man, no woman, no being, no life, no object is the same as they were before stepping into the river, or falling in the river, or having a river fall on top of them, or being rained on, or getting wet, as they were before that happened to them or it. No person steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river and it's not the same person. And that led me to recognizing the lottery of birth, the true actor behind who we are. Not a magical wizard that lives in the sky. Not some all-powerful grand creator puppet master. It is simply nothing more than the continuation of motion of matter and in accordance with the laws that dictate the way in which matter moves, happening around us, influencing the way that the matter that makes up our brain moves, making us who we are. Those are my thoughts, and I've had those thoughts for a very long time now, ever since I first learned about Heraclitus. Sure, maybe everything's not made out of fire, but when you step in the river, you are now the person that stepped in the river, because you simply have no choice. You are now the person that stepped in the river. And you can say, well, I had the choice whether or not to step in the river. Yes, but you only made that choice because of some other influence in your life. And once you stepped in the river, you can no longer take it back. You have no will. You stepped in the river. Having stepped in the river now has its influence on you. Okay, man, I could go on all day repeating the same thing over and over and over again in some different way or coming up with some new analogy. So I'm going to stop now because I've been ranting on for 14 minutes and I just can't shut the fuck up. Jack Herr, thank you so much. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. And until next time, continue to drunkenly philosophy on, my fellow drunken philosophers.